Today on Strawberry Ink, we explore a chilling case of greed, betrayal, and justice. One that spanned state lines and shook the communities of Florida and Georgia. This is the story of Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, Michael Jackson, and Bruce Nixon. People who would be tied to something severe and gruesome. It became with the gruesome discovery the bodies of two people who had been buried alive were found suffocated beneath the dirt of a shallow grave. Traced back to Duval County, Florida, an investigation pointed to four suspects. Thanks to ATM surveillance footage, the four were quickly tracked down. They were arrested in Charleston, South Carolina, first being detained at the Charleston police station and then booked into the Charleston County Detention Center. Afterwards, appearing before General Sessions Judge Irvin Condon, all four waived extradition alongside solicitor Randolph Murdaugh III. Yes, related to Alex Murdaugh, the now infamous killer lawyer who killed his wife and son, and who as well tampered in the investigation of a boat crash that his son caused for driving drunk. It resulted in the death of a young girl. Anyways, back to this story. Let's not get off topic. Two of the suspects got public defenders to explain the extradition process for them. Alan Wade got Laurel Proctor, and Tiffany Cole got Ted Smith. Michael Jackson and Bruce Nixon, on the other hand, represented themselves. And no, this is not the Michael Jackson who's a famous singer and who was a part of the Jackson 5. This is another one. This is a true criminal. So don't get too excited. And if you want to do the moonwalk, then go ahead. But since this is not the famous Michael Jackson, I'm not even gonna dance right now or sing Billie Jean to you. So, the four were picked up by the Duval County Sheriff's Office and driven back to Florida, stopping in the office's headquarters, and then being transported to the Duval County Jail before Judge Michael Witherby. All four were informed that they were facing severe charges, 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of first-degree robbery. They were denied bond and would remain locked up awaiting trial. Assignments were as followed. Alan Wade got public defender Rafik Eller. Michael Jackson got Richard Kuritz, also public defender. And the remaining two got private attorneys. Tiffany Cole got Donald Myers, and Bruce Nixon also got Myers. State Attorney Harry Shorstein presented this case to a grand jury, a Florida state criminal probe. This was in order to seek more severe charges. The outcome, this grand jury indicted 3 of them, Alan Wade, Tiffany Cole, and Michael Jackson, on 2 counts of capital murder, 2 counts of robbery, and 2 counts of first-degree kidnapping. Shorstein, serving as prosecutor, then announced that these would be the charges moving forward for those 3 defendants. Colin and others to prosecute as well. Deputy Assistant Attorney General Carolyn Snurkowski and Assistant State Attorney Alan Mizrahi, as well as Assistant Attorney General Meredith Charbula. The four pleaded not guilty before Judge Michael Weatherby. After this severe indictment occurred, Alan Wade hired another attorney, Randall Richardson, and Michael Jackson got another public defender, Richard Currit. This was as the death penalty was being sought. Most maintained their innocence throughout the rest of the proceedings. Only Bruce Nixon took a plea deal, pleading guilty to robbery, kidnapping, and second-degree murder. He would be sentenced only for the murder charge. The others went to trial. 3 jury trials followed. Each had a panel of 12 jury members and 4 alternates. In April 2007, Michael Jackson was put on trial. The jury found him guilty on all charges and recommended death. In October 2007, Tiffany Cole and Alan Wade were put on trial and found guilty. There were critical officials in the trials. For Michael Jackson, public defender Greg Steinberg represented him in the penalty phase, and this phase was prosecuted by Shorstein. Then in October 2007, there were 2 different trials at one. Jim Till represented Tiffany Cole, while Darcy Gallner prosecuted her, and Frank Tazzoni represented Alan Wade while Shorstein prosecuted him. Judge Weatherby presided over Spencer hearings as DeFree had received a recommendation of death. After the hearings, the final sentences were imposed. At this point, there would be no acquittals, no verdict tossings, and no retrials. On August 29, 2007, Michael Jackson received 3 different sentences: death, life in prison without parole, and 30 years in prison. That was on August 29, 2007. Then, on March 4, 2008, Bruce Nixon, the one who took a plea deal, received 45 years in prison. Alan Wade, on the other hand, just like Michael Jackson, received 3 different sentences: death, life in prison without parole, and 30 years in prison. And 2 days after that, Tiffany Cole, the last defendant, was sentenced. She received 2 different sentences: death and life in prison without parole. This has been one of the most gruesome murders in American history. The District 4 Medical Examiner's Office, which is basically the Duval County Medical Examiner's Office, confirmed that when being buried, both of these victims, Carol and Reggie Sumner, were still alive. It was as they had a bunch of dirt on them that they suffocated to death. And then their families reported them missing. Search dogs were used, yada yada, a whole search started. And these 2 bodies were dug out. They suffered a lot. The defendants, meanwhile, appealed their cases. Judge Weatherby would go on to not let Bruce Nixon withdraw his guilty plea. And then the state appeals court in Tallahassee refused to let him withdraw his plea nor resentence him. And also, this higher court refused to grant a new trial for the other 3. Therefore, the next step was to fight the death sentence. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to argue the verdicts nor that guilty plea, and by 2011, Bruce Nixon had fully lost his appeals. The other 3, however, did get success when appealing. In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned their death sentences and ordered that they be retried for that. Alan Wade was retried in June 2022. Another jury of 12 members and 4 alternates voted life in prison instead of death penalty. Therefore, Judge Weatherby, still working for that court, issued 2 life sentences, no parole under Florida law. Then, in May the following year, Michael Jackson was retried. However, another jury of 12 members and 4 alternates confirmed the death sentence. Therefore, on August 11th, 2023, Judge Weatherby resentenced him to death. And 10 days after that, the trial of Tiffany Cole started, the retrial. That jury of 12 members and 4 alternates saved her from remaining in death row, voting for life in prison without parole. Therefore, that is what Judge Weatherby issued afterwards. As of June 2024, Jackson's final appeals have been denied, and Governor Ron DeSantis has refused to grant clemency. Alan Wade said he'd never imagined he'd be in court given his parents' prior legal troubles. Tiffany Cole identified as emo. Michael Jackson, surprisingly, loves doing the moonwalk in his cell. And Bruce Nixon, he enjoys politics, especially reading about President Nixon from his cell. To this day, Alan Wade continues discussing his parents' legal troubles with cellmates as growing up, it was not unusual for him to hear that one of his parents were in jail, and Tiffany Cole still expresses her emo persona to this day with her cellmate. 4 defendants, one horrifying crime, and nearly 2 decades later, still with the legal proceedings. This case shows just how long American justice can take. Tiffany spent many years at the Lowell's Correctional Institution death row section. Then, once the Supreme Court overturned that death sentence, she was moved to the Duval County Jail. And now, she is at the Homestead Correctional Institution doing the time. Life in prison. Big move from the Lowell in Ocala to Duval County to Homestead. Michael Jackson was initially held at the Union Correctional Institution in Rayford, Florida, the death row prison. Then, after the overturning, was moved to the Duval County Jail. His appeal was sent over to the Florida Supreme Court in December 2024. He is receiving support from a group known as the ACLU, and there has been lots of conflict in this appellate phase, especially with Governor Ron DeSantis' change in death penalty policies. Therefore, meanwhile, he has been removed from death row. He did go back to the Union for some time, but after the FSC received the matter regarding the appeals, he was moved temporarily to the Orlando Reception Center and is now at the Blackwater River Correctional Facility in Milton. Alan Wade was on death row at the Union. Then, after the overturning, moved to the Duval County Jail. He went temporarily to the Orlando Reception Center and is now at the Madison Correctional Institution in Way-Madison. Bruce Nixon, after sentencing, was taken to the Orlando Reception Center and is now at his permanent facility, the Liberty Correctional Institution in Bristol. Thank you for listening to Strawberry Ink. May the victims rest in peace. Best of luck to the defendants, and have a good rest of your day.